Right, I'm gonna do an experience report. Oh, should I do 4-ACO DMT, PCP? I'll do 4-HOMAT. I think I'll do 4-HOMAT. Just don't really want to talk about it that much. I don't know why. It's just anyway. I'll get to it. So I've only had 4-HOMAT 3 times now. So I have very little to base this on, so this should be quite short. I had one higher dose, I think it was about 50 milligram dose. Been a while anyway. And then I had 2 lower doses as well. And I don't know what to say really. I found it quite underwhelming, should I say, considering what I've been told about it by friends who've taken it. I had a friend of mine, a schizophrenic friend of mine, and before you laugh and say you should have known he's schizophrenic, he knows shit about his drugs and he takes a lot of them. More than I have ever taken, and more different ones than I have ever taken. I would not necessarily guarantee, but pretty much guarantee. So yeah, he said that it was like psilocybin. A few other friends said it was like psilocybin. And I can relate on some level, but it just didn't feel psilocybin-y enough to me. Like 4-ACO DM did, 4-HOMAT kinda did, but 4-HOMAT it didn't, to be honest. And a lot of people hyping it up saying it does. It just didn't. So I'll get into why. The body sensations that I got from it were fairly reminiscent of mushrooms, and just a little bit weaker than mushrooms, I found. But they were pretty good body effects overall. Pretty happy with that. The visual aspect of 4-HOMAT was awesome, but I found it kind of lacking in the psychological department, weirdly enough, which is a lot of the reason I take magic mushrooms and other hallucinogens. It's not just about seeing pretty colours, and it's not just about feeling weird feelings, it's also about having weird concepts in your head and having, well, emotional crises. But no, not a crisis would be the wrong word, but kind of hard emotional realizations and culminations. Kind of helps me get rid of stuff that's been brewing in me emotionally. So yeah, at the lower doses of 4-HOMAT, I found it to be fair, similar to a lower dose of mushrooms. The effects did hit me in a wave, in the same sort of way as mushrooms did, but they just, I don't know, like, at the higher dose it just wasn't the same. So with the lower doses I remember kind of feeling like the same kind of weird wobbliness that you get from a lower dose of shrooms that you get physically. A similar kind of nausea in the stomach, kind of expanding feeling of the stomach, and that kind of tingle as you get in your chest. A similar, not exactly the same, but similar enough that it felt shroom reminiscent. And I got the minor visuals that you get with a small dose of shrooms, where everything's kind of enhanced, things are a bit more sparkly, a bit more crisp, a little more liquidy. But I just didn't get the same kind of headspace. I didn't feel any spiritual pull from it as such. It was more like LSD without the spiritual and really hardcore sort of grime, like, because LSD is quite psychologically, I would say, fucking tough journey. But yeah, I took the stuff and I enjoyed the minor visual enhancement. I enjoyed kind of the feeling of the sort of relaxation that shrooms give you physically, and the kind of hyper physical feeling, the kind of feeling of wanting to dance and move and groove. It's sort of like the motivational physical will and the relaxed physical will. That's something I liked about 4-HOMAT at lower and higher doses. I like the enhancement of visuals, but as I say, the mind space just wasn't as good. But again, this is only based on 3 experiences. So I had my 2 lower doses and then I went into the higher dose. Now, it's fair to say at the higher dose, I was pretty damn blasted. I went into kind of magic mushrooms level tripping, I won't deny that. So I had the classical, like, sort of spirals and the inside sort of circular globe feeling, the weird geological shapes and patterns when I close my eyes, the weird kind of whispers and murmurs that I get from entities was there. But even at that high dose it felt like luster, like it was kind of a mimic of the real thing in terms of the psychological intensity. Sort of similar thoughts were present, similar kind of entity feeling was present. You know, I could feel that as a thought, but I couldn't feel it as an emotion, if you will. It was like the difference between meeting a crazy entity on mushrooms or feeling a feeling of oneness on mushrooms and for Hermet is like, with mushrooms you don't just understand the feeling, you experience it properly, and it's kind of like, I don't know, first love, or say you're crying about something deeply and you can't stop it, and it's heartbreaking, but at the same time it's needed and it's beautiful. That was kind of how mushrooms felt. But for Hermet was kind of like, it's not your true love, but you feel quite a bit for them, and it's real in a sense, but it's not enough. It's not enough, and you know it's not enough, so you're there kind of lying to yourself to say that you love this feeling. And the same with the crying, it's like when you cry a little bit and you want to break through, but you just can't, and you're not, you know, you're not really there enough, you're not that stressed out, but at the same time you're not that relaxed. That was kind of how For Hermet felt psychologically. It's like I still got the concepts, the mad concepts, and sort of stepped into another world a little bit, like I would with mushrooms. But the emotional intensity wasn't there. There wasn't really much anxiety either, which is good for some and no fear. But it lacked, because instead of having that, it kind of had a feeling of doubt to it, the higher experience. So psychologically it wasn't so great. However, before I write it off and before it sounds like a terrible trip, the fucking actual visuals were off the fucking Richter scale. The physical feeling was off the Richter scale. This was definitely reminiscent of a shroom trip from that aspect. It just lacked the same kind of philosophical emotional intensity. Don't get me wrong, I tripped like fuck. There were visuals coming out of everything, me opening my eyes, rooms were spinning, colours were coming out of things. I could feel like the TV shrinking into itself and kind of eating things. So it was very psychologically stimulating and visually stimulating, but it had no real meaning or context. It's like kind of seeing it and being like, yeah, hyped up, but not really feeling like anything deep from it, on being like, well, this is meaningful. It was just kind of more a crazy kid's adventure. The physical feeling on it was fucking amazing again. The whole feeling of physical expansion and contraction at the same time, like I'm becoming the universe. I really felt the feeling of becoming the universe physically and visually, but as I say, emotionally, it's like I was there in terms of I was in those realms on the physical and visual plane. Like, yeah, look at all these crazy geometric patterns, the world's crazy, I can feel the TV coming into my arms, I know it's not, I can see that it's not, but it feels like it could. The concept was there, but it wasn't, I didn't feel connected to the TV or to these concepts as such. This is the point I'm trying to get across. I felt like I was nearly connected, and I just needed a little push or a little bridge. Perhaps 50 milligrams, 45 milligrams wasn't enough for me, but I kind of think that it wasn't enough for me. I think that for me, and possibly a lot of other people who'll take For Hermet, it can push them almost to the edge, but it won't break that emotional barrier. It could have been that I'd taken a lot of things in the past, or just my brain was in a psychological place where it wasn't ready to break, but I honestly felt like this wasn't substantial enough to break the psyche of its own right, at least for me anyway. But as I say, it was still a good trip. I mean, I'm still getting the hardcore hallucinations off it and such, so it was still pretty good. But yeah, so it lacked intensity is kind of what I'm saying. I haven't tried it in combination, but I would like to with another tryptamine, possibly mushrooms, or maybe 4-ACO-DMT. would not want to take it with a phenethylamine. I don't think that would go good. I think it depends on the phenethylamine, but say something like allyl that doesn't really have a soul, or a lot of phenethylamines that don't have a soul. To take it with a phenethylamine like that would probably just make you feel distraught and angry, I'd say. So I don't think I'd ever take it with a phenethylamine. I would like to try a combination with a classical tryptamine, and maybe a combination with something like LSD, because together, I think, kind of with the lack of intensity emotionally and spiritually that For Hermet had, but the level of concepts and madness that LSD has, that could be a really good mind expanding tool for actual mental concepts and ideologies as a combination. But then, I don't know, it's all hypothetical really, and I don't think I'll get the chance to experience those two together. Anyways, in conclusion, For Hermet was a pretty fucking good chem, to be honest. I did enjoy the experiences. It was lackluster emotionally, but it was definitely a strong chem in terms of physical and visual tripping. It's just that there was just something missing, as I say. I would probably take it again, out of curiosity, on a higher dose, like probably 70 milligrams or so, just to see what kind of effect it would have on me. And also because, as I say, whilst it lackluster in that aspect, it was good fun. It was a nice trip. It did give me a lot of good concepts, and I did feel somewhat empowered by it. I did feel somewhat better. It was a good learning tool. It just didn't give me a spiritual thing I was looking for. So yeah, it's a good chem. I'd probably take it once or twice a year, and I'd maybe try it with a combination. But in reality, it's not that hype for me, but it's not completely written off. But anyways, that was my experience report on For Hermet. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening. And if you have anything to say about For Hermet, let me know in the comments or on a message. Thank you, and goodbye.